On December 2nd, 2022, a family in India took a bold step, exposing a nightmare that had been haunting them for some time. After living in fear of judgment and their own disbelief in the paranormal, they finally chose to break their silence. This wasn't just some casual post for attention, though. These videos, these unsettling glimpses into the surreal, were a desperate plea for help. For a long time, the family refused to share what was happening. They feared ridicule from friends and family who were skeptical of anything remotely paranormal. They'd heard it all. Ghosts are a superstition, a myth, but what they were living through felt all too real. The strange happenings began slowly, barely noticeable at first. Little things, misplaced objects, strange creaks, that feeling of being watched. But over time, things escalated, pushing the family closer to the edge of reason. They were trying to keep things under control, trying to rationalize away the bizarre incidents. But after one particular event, they could no longer deny the truth. They needed help, and they hoped that by sharing their story, someone might provide answers. The first video in their series starts innocuously enough. The family is going about their day, and their young son is playing near the window. But then something catches his eye. His expression shifts from curiosity to confusion, and finally to fear. He stares intently outside the window, as though seeing something the rest of his family cannot. Something, the boy mutters, pointing toward the glass. His parents, somewhat distracted, look over but don't see anything unusual. They dismiss his words, assuming he's just playing around. But the boy's face says it all. Whatever he saw terrified him. He turns, running from the window in a blind panic, diving onto the couch. He gasps, trying to catch his breath as he points again toward the window. His hand is shaking, his eyes wide. Cherry! It's Cherry! Cherry, the so-called imaginary friend, is apparently a frequent visitor in the boy's life. His father, though concerned, takes a deep breath and walks over to the window, half expecting to see something. But there is nothing, just the stillness of the outside world, undisturbed. Trying to calm his son, the father chuckles nervously. He chalks it up to a child's imagination. Kids see things all the time, right? Imaginary friends, harmless phantoms. But there's something different about this. The boy's fear is real. It's raw. And it's clear he's not playing games. But after that incident, life continued. The family tried to forget about Cherry and his supposed visit. After all, what could they do? There was nothing outside, nothing there. Or so they thought. Over the next few days, strange occurrences started to stack up. First, it was the knocking, loud, repetitive, and untraceable. It began out of nowhere, echoing through the house late at night. The knocks would reverberate, rattling the walls, but no matter where they looked, the source remained elusive. They would rush to the front door, thinking someone might be outside, only to find the streets empty. Every single time. Then, there were the electronics. The smoke detector, specifically. It would go off randomly, blaring in the middle of the night when the family was fast asleep. At first, they thought it was a malfunction, maybe a low battery. But after replacing it multiple times, the random beeps continued. Each night, the sound pierced through the house, disrupting their sleep and their sanity. And then came the event that changed everything. The family, in desperation, decided to take matters into their own hands. They were not religious people, but they figured it couldn't hurt to play an audio recording of a prayer through the speakers in their living room. Perhaps this would cleanse their home of whatever strange presence was tormenting them. Maybe Cherry would finally leave. As the prayer echoed through the room, the atmosphere in the house shifted. At first, nothing seemed to happen. But then, out of the corner of their eyes, they noticed something odd. The floor, clean moments before, was now crawling with maggots. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. The family watched in disbelief as the squirming creatures writhed on the floor, seemingly appearing from nowhere. They scrambled back in horror, unable to process what they were seeing. This wasn't a house with sanitation problems. There had been no food left out, no reason for such an infestation. But there they were, writhing and crawling across the living room floor, almost as if summoned by the prayer. The family, already on edge, had now reached a breaking point. The appearance of the maggots was the last straw. This wasn't just a coincidence. This wasn't just their imagination running wild. Something was in their home, something dark, something malicious, and it wasn't going to leave easily. They posted the video online, hoping that someone, somewhere, could provide them with an explanation. Was this the work of a spirit, a curse, or was there a logical explanation that they had overlooked? The maggots seemed to disappear as quickly as they had come, but the feeling of dread that hung over the family never quite left. They had opened the door to something, and they were left with the unsettling knowledge that Cherry, or whatever it was still there, watching them. To this day, the family remains haunted by the strange events that unfolded. They continue to experience the occasional knock, the random smoke detector beeps, and most disturbingly, the eerie feeling of being watched. Whether or not Cherry was real, the fear certainly was. And now, the world could watch too and judge for themselves. Was this the work of the supernatural, or just an unfortunate coincidence? Either way, one thing was certain: the family's life would never be the same again. The mystery of Cherry and the maggots remains unsolved, and the house, well, it's never quite felt like home again.